When you think about South Asia, it's just teeming with life, isn't it? So many vibrant cultures, traditions all mixed together.
Absolutely. A real kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
But there's also that other side, the complex history, the communal tensions.
Yeah, it's like this long-running, really complicated family feud sometimes. And it spills over borders, doesn't it?
It really does, like a geopolitical game of dominoes almost. Tensions flare up in one place.
And suddenly minorities somewhere else feel the heat. Human lives caught in the middle.
Precisely. Which is why today we wanted to do a deep dive into the stories of three key figures. People who dreamed of something different at the very beginning.
Right. We're talking about Maulana Abul Kalam Azad in India, Jogendranath Mandal in Pakistan, and Dhirendranath Datta in what became Bangladesh. Architects of nations, really.
They had these incredibly bold visions, didn't they, for inclusive nations where minorities would genuinely belong, not just be sort of a
Tolerated.
monumental task back then. Honestly, it sounds a bit like trying to herd cats in a monsoon. So ambitious. It was. You had the whole upheaval of partition, immense hope, immense danger all at once. And these leaders were actively trying to shape the soul of these new nations.
A very courageous stance, considering the climate.
Definitely. So where should we start? Maybe with Azad.
Let's picture India, the 1940s. Independence is coming, but the air is thick with talk of partition.
And Azad, this incredible scholar, freedom fighter, later India's first education minister, he was pushing hard for something else entirely.
This idea he called Ummati Wahida.
Exactly, one united community. He fundamentally believed Hindus and Muslims were part of the same Indian fabric, not separate nations needing separate states.
He was fiercely against the two-nation theory. Saw partition as a massive mistake, didn't he?
He did. He called it a fundamental mistake in that really powerful speech he gave at Delhi's Jama Masjid, October 47.
Urging Muslims to stay, to claim India as their own. A very moving appeal.
Deeply moving. He argued their destiny was here, in India, as equals.
Which makes it, well, quite sobering to look at the situation. For many Muslims in India today, we're talking about what, around 200 million people?
A huge population. Yet there's this growing sense of political marginalization you hear about.
Yeah, and the language shifts too, right? Like after around 2014, sometimes the specific term Muslim gets swapped out for the vaguer term minority.
That pizza versus flatbread analogy you mentioned earlier?
Kind of like that, yeah. Generalizing it, maybe losing something specific in the process.
And that shift often mirrors deeper trends. Pew Research, for instance, found in 2023 that social hostility, even violence against Muslims, seemed to increase around election times.
So that unified tapestry Azad dreamed of. It feels strained. Frayed, even.
It certainly faces challenges. That ideal of Ummati Wahida has hit some stark realities. You could almost sarcastically call it Ummati Oops in hindsight, couldn't you?
Oof. Yeah. You can almost imagine Azad today, seeing the news. Maybe a disappointing tweet. Told you so. Unity with the path. Hashtag missed opportunity. Hashtag what if.
A somber thought experiment, definitely, and it highlights that divergence starkly.
So, if Azad's dream hit roadblocks, Jogendranath Mandal's story, that takes an even tougher turn, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely heart-wrenching. Here you have a prominent Dalit leader in pre-partition India.
Fighting against that historical oppression from upper caste elites.
Right. And he saw a strategic path in aligning with the Muslim League. He thought maybe these two marginalized groups, Dalits and Muslims, could work together.
Like Batman and Robin, but against bureaucratic oppression.
Yeah, maybe something like that. He genuinely believed it was a way to fight for the educationally backward, those crushed by upper caste tyranny, as he put it in his resignation letter later.
And he became Pakistan's first Minister for Law and Labor. He must have had such high hopes for this new nation.
Immense hopes, a chance for justice, equality, a fresh start away from the old hierarchies.
But it unraveled so quickly for him.
Tragically fast. When many upper caste Hindus left East Pakistan, the Dalits who stayed became incredibly vulnerable. Communal violence flared.
And Pakistan's own focus seemed to shift, didn't it? Towards religious identity, perhaps overshadowing Mandal's vision of cross-community solidarity.
It seems that way. His loyalty, the plight of his community, it felt like they were disregarded in this push for religious purity, as some have called it.
A total betrayal, really. He ended up fleeing back to India in 1950, just 3 years after Pakistan's creation. Completely disillusioned.
Profoundly disillusioned. And his story ends so grimly, too, dying in 68 under suspicious circumstances. Talk of potential poisoning, it's chilling.
A terrible end. And a stark warning about the fate of minorities, even in a nation conceived, in part, as a refuge.
And sadly, the struggles for minorities in Pakistan didn't end with Mandal. The Pakistani Hindu Council estimates thousands still migrate to India each year because of persecution.
I remember reading Farnaz Isfahani's book, Purifying the Land of the Pure. It mentioned horrific numbers, like potentially 1,000 Hindu girls in Sindh facing forced conversions yearly.
Yes, and then you had General Zia-ul-Haq's Islamization policies in the 80s, the whole concept of dhimmis for non-Muslims. It's systemically entrenched discrimination.
And Human Rights Watch reports, even as recently as 2024, still highlight ongoing discrimination against Hindus, Christians, Ahmadis. The blasphemy laws are a huge issue, too.
It creates a very precarious legal situation for minorities. It's grimly ironic, almost like Pakistan's minority policies offer different flavors of oppression depending on the group. A dark joke, but it reflects a painful reality.
Such a contrast to Mandal's initial dream of escaping tyranny.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our third figure, Dhirendranath Datta.
Right, the Hindu lawyer in East Pakistan who chose to stay after partition. He believed in a united Pakistan, but one that respected Bengali culture.
His big moment was in the Constituent Assembly, February 1948, standing up and demanding Bengali be made an official language alongside Urdu.
Just think about the guts that took. A single voice challenging the West Pakistani establishment, who are often quite dismissive of Bengalis, weren't they?
Hugely dismissive. And Datta's demand wasn't just about language. It tapped into a deep wellspring of Bengali cultural pride and resentment over feeling marginalized.
So that speech really sparked something bigger.
Oh, definitely. It's seen as a key catalyst for the Bengali nationalist movement, which ultimately led to Bangladesh's independence in 1971, a pivotal moment.
But like Mandal, Datta paid a terrible price for his principles.
A horrific price. During the Liberation War in 71, he and his son were arrested by the Pakistan Army, tortured, murdered. Their bodies were never even found.
Such a personal tragedy woven into the birth of a nation.
And what makes it even more poignant, perhaps, is that Bangladesh itself, born from that struggle and founded on ostensibly secular ideals, has struggled to fully protect its own minorities.
You mean the violence against Hindus there?
Yes. The Bangladesh Hindu-Buddhist Christian Unity Council reported just recently, in August 2024, over 2,000 incidents of communal violence against Hindus in just a couple of weeks. Deaths, attacks on temples, homes.
Why? What fuels that?
It's complex. Sometimes Hindus are seen as allies of the ruling party or of India, making them targets in political disputes. And then you have extremist groups like Jamaat-e-Islami actively pushing intolerance.
So the secular dream. It's like that houseplant analogy. You hope it thrives, but sometimes it just wilts under harsh conditions.
That's a sadly apt way to put it. The promise of an inclusive Bangladesh, the very thing Datta fought for, is facing serious, persistent threats.
Looking at all three, Azad, Mandal, Datta, and the outcomes.
Yeah.
It really makes you see how interconnected the fate of minorities is across the whole region.
It's undeniable, like a really bad group project where one person's actions mess things up for everyone else.
Was this always foreseen? Did people warn about this?
Actually, yes. Even back in October 47, someone like Nawab Ahmed Said Khan of Chitari warned that creating a theocratic Pakistan could have dangerous consequences for how the Hindu majority in India might view its own minorities. A ripple effect.
And we saw that play out so tragically, didn't we? Like after the Babri Masjid demolition in India in '92.
Exactly. The violence didn't stay contained. It erupted in Pakistan and Bangladesh, too. Retaliatory attacks. Reports said over 120 temples were destroyed in Pakistan alone.
That awful dynamic. You hurt my minority, so I'll hurt yours. And the victims are just ordinary people caught in the crossfire.
Precisely. And studies, like one from the South Asia Democratic Forum in 2023, show how the cycle continues, often amplified now by social media, especially platforms like X. It fuels the fire instantly.
Making life incredibly precarious for minorities everywhere in the region. It's like a never-ending high-stakes soap opera, but with real lives on the line.
A very grim drama indeed. So reflecting on Azad's, Mandal's, and Datta's shattered dreams, we have to ask, what went wrong? Why this divergence?
Well, one factor seems to be leadership changes, right? After the giants like Gandhi, Nehru, Jinnah, Mujib, maybe later leaders found it easier to appeal to the majority for votes.
Well, it's certainly been argued that prioritizing majoritarian concerns became a more common political strategy, like choosing political junk food, quick and easy appeal over the harder work of building long-term inclusive structures.
And the trauma of partition itself must play a huge role.
Absolutely massive. It wasn't just lines on a map. The UN estimated 14 million people displaced. Imagine the psychological scars. Hindus left in Pakistan feeling abandoned. Muslims in India feeling like outsiders. Those feelings linger across generations.
Then there are the specific policy failures in each country.
Right. Things like Pakistan's blasphemy laws, which we mentioned. In India, maybe uneven enforcement of secularism. The Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 raised a lot of concerns for Muslims, for example. And in Bangladesh, the struggle against rising extremism.
And underpinning a lot of this are those extremist groups stirring the pot.
Yes, on all sides. Groups like Jamaat Islami or hardline Hindutva outfits, they thrive on division, like that loud uncle at a wedding who just makes everything awkward and tense. They amplify the worst narratives.
It's such a tangle of history, politics, societal fears. So if we want to honor those founding visions, how do we even start to move forward? It feels overwhelming.
It is complex, but not hopeless. The absolute starting point has to be a real, demonstrating commitment to equal rights for all citizens. Not just on paper, but in practice. Laws need to protect minorities and, crucially, be enforced.
And breaking that cycle of retaliation you mentioned.
Regional cooperation is key there. Maybe platforms like SARC, even if they've struggled, could be venues for dialogue, specifically on minority protection, recognizing it's a shared problem, not just leverage against each other.
Empowering the minority communities themselves must be vital too. Political representation, economic opportunities.
Definitely. When minorities feel they have a stake, when they're included, look at places like Canada, maybe societies tend to be more stable. The Fragile States Index often reflects this. Inclusion builds resilience.
What about tackling the hate speech in the extremist groups directly?
It's critical. We need to challenge the idea that all speech is free speech, especially when it directly incites violence. Governments, platforms, civil society. Everyone has a role in curbing hate speech and countering those extremist narratives.
And maybe education, reminding people of what Azad, Mandal, and Datta actually stood for.
Yes. Education about those founding ideals, plus meaningful interfaith dialogue. Finding common ground, heck, maybe even just the shared love for cricket, can build bridges at a human level.
It still feels like untangling those earphones, though. A really difficult, knotty problem. Expectations need to be managed, maybe.
Realistic, yes. But the moral imperative is clear. Minorities aren't just statistics or political issues. They're individuals with lives, dreams, families. Remember that quote from Lord Acton back in 1907?
The one about the security of minorities being the best test of a country's freedom.
That's the one. It's still profoundly true today.
So despite everything, there's still hope. South Asia is resilient.
Immensely resilient. And minorities are not just victims, they are vital threads in the rich fabric of each nation. The call to action is really for everyone, leaders, citizens, people online, to finally honor those founders through concrete steps, not just rhetoric.
It's a collective responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
To help those minority communities who often keep hoping against the odds finally find their place in the sun.
Exactly. Their enduring hope is perhaps the strongest argument for why we must keep striving to make those inclusive visions a reality.